Good morning, girls, and welcome to my kitchen classroom. Girls, last week I sent out a recording on how to add and subtract fractions. Well, what we are going to do now, I'm going to do a recording on how to add and subtract mixed numbers. Now, I did send out a note, which you can put in your maths notebook on how to do it. It is a recipe for how to do it. So I'm going to go through that step by step. I want you to watch very, very carefully. The first one that I want to look at, and that is if we've got 2.5 plus 1 3/4. Okay. Now, step 1, when we add mixed numbers, change all the mixed numbers into improper fractions. Now, you will see what we've got in that line. We will move down to that line. So, the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to change them into these mixed numbers into improper fractions. So, how do we do that? Denominator times the whole number, add the numerator. So, we're going to say 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5 over 2. And we're going to add it. Let's look at this one. Denominator times whole number, add the numerator. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 3 is 7 over 4. So 2.5 is 5 over 2. 1 3/4 is 7 over 4. Now, let's look a little bit. Our next step says find our lowest common denominator. And girls, never before has it become so important that you use the lowest common denominator. Because if you don't use the lowest common denominator, when you multiply, your numerators are going to get very, very big, and that is where you're going to make your mistakes. So if you look at the denominators that I've got here, one is a multiple of the other one. So I'm going to use the denominator of 4. So my next step is I'm going to change both of those fractions into an equivalent fraction with the denominator of 4. So I'm going to do it this way. 2 will divide into 4. 2 times 5 is 10. 4 will divide into 4. 1 times 7 is 7. Okay, let's go and start at the top again. 2.5, 5 over 2, and 10 over 4, they're all equivalent fractions. But only when we had got them both to the same denominator could we add them. 1 3/4, 7 over 4, and 7 over 4. Okay, now, the next step is add my numerators. So I've got 10 over 4 plus 7 over 4. I have got 17 over 4. Now, if you read your note, it will say, you will be left with an improper fraction. Now, an improper fraction is top heavy, so he's crying out to be turned into a mixed number. So how do we do that? We divide the denominator into the numerator. And we say, how many groups of 4 can I make out of 17? Which is 4 times 4 is 16, and there's 1/4 left over. My 1/4 is in its simplest form, so I leave it like that. And there is my answer. Alright, so let's go back step by step again. We had 2.5 plus 1 3/4. Step 1 said we changed them both into improper fractions. Then found our lowest common denominator. Then changed them both into equivalent fractions with the same denominator. And then we add our numerators. We're left with our improper fraction, which we change into a mixed number. Let's have a look at the next one. I've got 1 3/5 plus 2 1/4. 2 1/4. Okay, now my note says that what I should do is I must change both of my mixed numbers into improper fractions. So how am I going to do that? Denominator times whole number plus the numerator. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 3 is 8 over 5. Plus 2 times 4 is 8 and 1 is 9 over 4. So we now have improper fractions. My next step says find the lowest common denominator. So if I say my multiples are 5 and my multiples are 4, I'm going to find my lowest common denominator is 20. Now this is the step where girls most likely go wrong. We are going to change both of those fractions into an equivalent fraction with the denominator of 20. So I'm going to say 5 will go into 20. 4 times 8 is 32. See what I said about numerators getting very big. 4 will divide into 20. 5 times 9 is 45. Okay, my next step says add my numerators. Now, let's add them. We can add across. 2 plus 5 is 7. 3 times 4, 3 plus 4 is 7. So I'm left with 77 over 20. It's an improper fraction. It's top heavy and it wants to be turned into a mixed number. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide my denominator into my numerator. How many groups of 20 can I make out of 77? 3 20s are 60 and I have got 17 over 20 left over. Now, I want us to have a look at my answer. I've got 3 wholes and 17 over 20. I've got to ask myself, is the fraction part in its simplest form? Yes, it is. If I look carefully, 17 is a prime number. There is no number that can, apart from 1, that will divide equally into both the 17 and the 20. So that is, I can't reduce it anymore. Okay, I'm going to try one more. Okay. 1 1/3 plus 3 3/4. All right, step 1 says change all of the mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I'm going to say 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1 is 4 over 3. 3 times 4 is 12 plus 3 is 15 over 4. So 1 1/3 is 4 over 3. 3 3/4, 15 over 4. Now, my next step says find my lowest common multiple, which is going to become my lowest common denominator. So, how am I going to do that? There I've got 12. Now I'm going to change both of those fractions into an equivalent fraction with the denominator of 12. 3 will divide into 12. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 will divide into 12. 3 times 15 is 45. My next step says add my numerators. So I'm going to add, let's add across. We'll add the units first. 5 plus 6 is 11, carry the 1. 1 and 1 is 2 and 4 is 6. So I've got 61 over 12. I'm left with an improper fraction, which I now need to change into a mixed number. How am I going to do that? I'm going to divide the denominator into the numerator, and I'm going to say how many groups of 12 can I make out of 61? 12 times 5 is 60, and I have got 1/12 left over, and it's in its simplest form. I'm going to do one more, which is going to be a subtraction one. So I'm going to say 3 1/4 minus 1 1/2. All right. Does not matter that the sign has changed. What I'm going to do, first step says change all of my mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I'm going to say 3 times 4 is 12 plus 1 is 13 over 4. There's a subtraction sign, must come down underneath. 1 times 2 is 2 plus 1 is 3 over 2. I cannot subtract them as they stand. I need to find my lowest common multiple, which is going to become my lowest common denominator, which is 4. Now I'm going to change both of those fractions into an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 4. 4 will divide into 4. 1 times 13 is 13. Subtract. 2 will go into 4. 2 times 3 is 6. My next step says subtract my numerators. So 13 over 4 minus 6 over 4 is going to leave me with 7 over 4. I'm left with an improper fraction, which I now change to a mixed number. 4 will divide into 7. 1 times 4 is 4, and 3 over 4 left over, and it's in its simplest form. Girls, I hope that you girls will have understood this, and if you go over the video and you go over your maths notes, you will be able to do it. Enjoy.